A lot of people don't know this, but I actually have hobbies that don't involve going on Rate Your Music's esoteric charts and writing a bunch of, pretentious bullshit and putting it in a video. No, I actually like other forms of art as well, especially video games. I've been playing video games pretty avidly since I was a small child, and I've played a lot of games over the years, and I figured I would just, talk about some of my favorite games. I made a little list that I have in front of me. I'm just kidding. There's nothing on this piece of paper. It's on my computer. This is just like graphing paper with nothing on it. Obviously, there are a ton of games that I love, and if I talked about every single game that I ever loved ever, then this video would be 5 hours long. And I mean, some of you might want to watch that, but I don't know. Maybe you could subscribe to my OnlyFans, and you can watch it there. I'll put up a bunch of honorable mentions and stuff on the screen, just so that way if you comment like why don't you like this game, you don't have to. I just saved you your time. There's also a ton of games that I haven't played that I would love to play at some point in my life. So maybe, 5 years or so from now, this list will be completely different and it'll be completely obsolete. Maybe I'll just hate all of these games. Who knows? Anyway, number 15, I have Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. This was originally made for the Game Boy Advance. It's personally my favorite Castlevania game, definitely my favorite, especially of the Metroidvania Castlevania games, or as I like to call them, the Castlevania of games, because every single title of the game has of in it, Symphony of the Night, Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, they all have in the title, so I call it the Castlevania of games. But this is definitely the best one. I think most would probably agree that it's the best one that's on the Game Boy Advance. I love the way that, when you get different weapons, it kind of affects your combat. You can play with more heavy weapons or whatever. I'm pretty sure that the overworld itself isn't as big as it is in some of the other ones, mainly Symphony of the Night. I think that's, that was like the first one. That's the one that a lot of people would probably say is like the best one. And I do like that one a lot, don't get me wrong, but Aria of Sorrow is definitely the one that I played the most. Also, I know a lot of you guys like Reptilian Club Boys. There's a lot of samples from this game in their music, oddly enough, which I never really realized until later. Number 14, I have Jet Set Radio. I believe this was originally put out on the Dreamcast, but nobody bought a Dreamcast, so I played it on PC. This is a game that has kind of this cool cel-shaded art style. You're on roller skates and you paint graffiti throughout the world. The gameplay might not be as varied or as smooth as some of the Tony Hawk games or even the SXX or other kind of extreme sports games of the era, but I just love kind of the style that the game has. I love the art style. I love the music. I love there's like gangs and stuff that like try to kill you for, spray painting, and then you can like spray paint on them, and I think that's pretty neat. It's a very unique game, and I love how creatively you can kind of just traverse the world and accomplish your tasks, so to speak. Sega has all these like intellectual properties that they just do nothing with. Like you go to the Sonic and Sega All-Star Racing roster, and like they got a ton of IPs that they're just not really doing much with. I know there was that new Shenmue game, and of course Yakuza, which is probably easily Sega's best series period. But unfortunately, Yakuza didn't end up making the list because I've only played Yakuza 0, and I haven't played it for long enough to call it one of my favorite games. But I do really love what I've played of it. Either way, though, definitely recommend giving a Jet Set Radio a spin. And number 13, I got Katamari Damacy. This was originally put out on the PS2, but I played it on the Switch. I still don't own a Switch. I just borrowed my friend's Switch for like a long time. Shout out to Tom for letting me borrow his Switch. This is a game where you have a giant ball and you roll stuff up, and you try to make it into a giant ball. And it's really fun. It's really satisfying. It's really relaxing, but kind of intense at the same time. The controls definitely take some getting used to at first, but once you get used to them, it becomes really fun and really addicting, and it ends kind of abruptly. I finished the game in like a few days, and I was like, oh, that's it? I want to play more of it. But I don't know. There's other Katamari games that I haven't delved into, but, I probably should because I love this one so much. Super Meat Boy is my number 13 pick. I've played this game on multiple platforms, almost to 100%. I think there's probably a couple levels that I couldn't get the A+ on or whatever, but I've played this game almost to 100%. Definitely a classic indie game for sure. A lot of people mention it alongside some of the hardest games of all time. People talk about how difficult this game is. And while it's certainly a challenging game, it never feels frustrating because all of the levels are really short. You can beat the levels in around 30 seconds or so. And so every time you die, you can go back to where you were when you died, and it never really feels super frustrating. It's not like you get a game over and you have to start back a billion miles away. And I think because of that, makes the game very addictive. And it's difficult for sure, but it never feels frustrating. It kind of borders the the line between playing it like a mobile game almost, where you can just pick it up and play it at any time, but you can also sit down for hours on end and play it. And I think that when a game is able to do that, it's pretty neat. So definitely play Super Meat Boy if you like super tough, old school kind of platformers. The controls are really responsive. You can jump on walls and stuff. You can actually play as characters from other indie games. I forgot about that. It's kind of a crossover. It's like the Super Smash Brothers of indie games, except not really at all. It's kind of neat though that you can do that. Neat little nod to some other indie games in there. Number 11, I have a Shadow of the Colossus. This was originally for the PS2, but I played it on the PS4. I play a lot of these games kind of via re-releases, so I guess keep that in mind while I go through this list. But Shadow of the Colossus is absolutely stunning. There's like this huge world that you go through, and you have to kill these giant beasts. But there's kind of a moral dilemma because the plot of the game is super vague. There's this girl that's asleep, and you're like, I have to kill the beast to wake her up. But then the beasts don't really do anything to you until you harm them. So it's kind of like, am I doing right? Shadow of Colossus is absolutely stunning. It's definitely a modern classic. I'd probably recommend playing the PS4 remake because I'm pretty sure that the game wouldn't run well on an original PS2 at this point just because it's so huge. They re-released it on the PS3 also, so I mean, if you got a PS3 laying around, you could probably play it on there as well. But yeah, definitely play Shadow of the Colossus. And you know what else you should play that's from that generation originally? Super Monkey Ball. I put 1 and 2 kind of both in the same spot. This is on the GameCube. The first Super Monkey Ball, I believe, is actually just a port of an arcade game, and so it has kind of this more arcadey nature to the gameplay, whereas Super Monkey Ball 2 is kind of made more with a single-player console experience in mind because there's kind of a story, and there's more branching levels, or levels that you kind of have to go through in this more linear order, akin to like a Mario game or something. Personally, I kind of prefer the first one just because I think the level design is a bit more memorable, mainly just because you have to play through them so many times. Because every time you die, it's like you gotta, well, not every time you die, but every time you get a game over, you kind of have to go through the whole set of levels again. And I kind of like the arcadey nature of it, but I do appreciate what they were doing with the second one, so I do kind of have to put both on this list because I do love both games. I think that they're both great. But yeah, Super Monkey Ball is just super fun. Really, I've never met anybody who's played Super Monkey Ball and they didn't think it was like in their top 10 favorite games. Well, maybe that's not true, but they all love Super Monkey Ball. Everyone loves it. Super Mario 64. This is my number 9 pick. I know that this game is kind of dated nowadays, but it's still my favorite Mario game, my favorite 3D Mario, even though I've played Odyssey, and I think Odyssey is amazing as well. Something about Mario 64, just getting all 120 of the stars, I think that's just a life experience that everyone should have. And the game is still really fun today. You know, it's definitely aged for sure. It's arguably, I think, the first true 3D platformer, you know, that wasn't an isometric view thing on a 16-bit console or whatever. But yeah, I know a lot of people complain about like the 100 coin missions and stuff, but I never really found them to be that difficult. I also kind of became obsessed with watching Super Mario 64 speedruns on YouTube for a while, so if that's a rabbit hole you want to go down, then please do that. Video game speedruns are pretty interesting. Actually, Super Monkey Ball has pretty interesting speedruns as well, because with a lot of these speedruns, they can kind of break the game and just kind of exploit all these glitches, but with Super Meatball, oh geez. In Super Monkey Ball, the speedruns of the game are pretty entertaining because you kind of just have to use your own wits to get through the levels, and it's fun. That's what I meant to say. Sonic Mania is probably the best Sonic game ever made, quite easily in my opinion. I know that Nintendo kind of beat out Sega in the whole console wars or whatever, because Sega had to go third party, but something that Nintendo could take notes from Sega from is being consumer friendly, because every time there's a fan-made project, Nintendo just has to shut it down for no reason, even though like they're not losing any money, it's just free publicity. But then when Sega sees fan-made projects, what do? They take the people who make them and they hire them, and then they make a good freaking game. Sonic Mania is like essentially a ROM hack that Sega gave a budget to and funded and, you know, released. It'd be nice if, you know, they made a Sonic game that was more like the Dreamcast games, but, you know, without all the bullshit mech shooting and the, you know, treasure hunting or whatever. If it was just the Sonic levels and they made it, you know, more fun and modernized, like I think that would be a good Sonic game, but they just refuse to do that because they hate money. But I don't know, I don't want to, you know, be one of those people who just rants about Sonic on the internet, but I guess that's what I'm doing now. That's kind of my brand. Yeah, 109 mics, baby. Portal 2. Like, what do I have to say? What could I even say about Portal 2? I love the writing. It's so witty. I love the world building and how creative the gameplay is, because it's a puzzle game, but it's a very story-driven puzzle game with, witty writing and kind of this, almost post-apocalyptic setting. I like Wheatley. I like when he comes in and he says, like, you have a minor case of serious brain damage. That was, like, the funniest shit in the world to me as a 6th grader, and I still think it's funny. I still love that. I like the song that they play at the end of the game where the turrets are like singing. I guess this is a spoiler, but this game is like 10 years old at this point. This game turns 10 years old this year, man. That is crazy. Portal 1 is a classic as well, but by the time you finish watching this video, you probably could have beaten that game like 3 times, and you can't really say the same about Portal 2, and I think that for that reason, Portal 2 has to go in here over Portal 1. But, really, both of them could be in this spot. Why not? I put both the Monkey Ball games in that spot, so why not? Let's just put both of them here. I got nothing to lose, no one's gonna stop me. No one's gonna comment saying, oh, you can't do that. And I'm like, dude, it's my list. Make your own list, huh? All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be mean. The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, I've put more hours into this game than I'd like to admit. It's a really fun, kind of randomly generated top-down shooter kind of game. Takes a lot of cues from the original Zelda, a lot of nods, a lot of references to older games. I think it's kind of the same guy, Edmund McMillen, kind of the mastermind behind Meat Boy, which, as you guys know, I'm a fan of that game too. And there's a lot of retro game references in that too, so just gotta love how indie games have all these references to older retro games, but it's not even just nostalgia pandering, because it's a really fun game even with that aside. However, I do want to say that I couldn't play this game with a keyboard, because playing it with a keyboard, I feel like I should just cut off my hands at that point. Please do use a controller if you're going to play this game, unless you're used to the keyboard controls, different strokes for different folks. But yeah, I definitely couldn't get into this game with a keyboard. Definitely recommend using a controller to play it. Okay, now we're entering the top 5, so we can have a dramatic drum roll, although actually no, I probably should have saved that dramatic drum roll for number 1. But regardless, we're entering the top 5. Super Metroid is number 5 easily. I'm a sucker for the whole Metroidvania format of games, and none of that would even exist without Super Metroid, so we have to give props to Super Metroid for that. I don't really rank games just based on their influence or anything like that. I just rank them based on how fun they are, and I think Super Metroid still holds up brilliantly to this day. The main thing that I think makes Super Metroid still such a brilliant game to this day is the way that the game kind of rewards you for mastering its controls, because there's a wall jump in the game, and where most games you just kind of cling to the wall and then you hit the jump button and you can wall jump, in Super Metroid it's a little more complicated than that. You have to get it right, and whenever you can execute it, if you learn how to execute it, you can actually kind of traverse through the world in a way that's a lot more open-ended. It's not entirely open world, it is a Metroidvania after all, so it does kind of want you to go to specific places at specific times, which is kind of why I've never really been that big a fan of the 3D Metroid games like Metroid Prime and stuff. There's a lot of things that game does right, but still, it's not entirely for me. But Super Metroid, though, I think is amazing, and I love Zero Mission as well. I love all the 2D Metroid games, honestly, and I love all the games that it inspired. I love the whole Metroidvania format, and I think Super Metroid, the way it kind of executed it so great from an early stage in this genre's life, I mean, before it was even really a genre, is amazing. Now, number 4 is kind of a polarizing game. A lot of people didn't like this game. This is a more recent game, but I played it and I really loved it. Death Stranding, absolutely. Not only is the story of this game like super intriguing and weird and kind of hilarious just for how off the deep end it is, but I actually found the gameplay to be really fun too. You kind of you deliver packages and stuff. You're an Amazon Prime worker because everybody's stuck at home because of the pandemic, and you have to deliver people their Amazon packages, and that's the plot of the game. But I find the world to just be so mesmerizing, and the gameplay to be really rewarding with kind of the way that everybody's kind of connected, how you can add stuff to the world to make traversing through its land easier. But even still, I know a lot of people are like, oh, the game is like painful and it's supposed to be painful to play, but I don't even really think that's the case. I think it's just fun to go through the world and just kind of take it all in. It's definitely not instantly gratifying in the same way a lot of, other third-person shooters or whatever would be, but that's kind of what I like about the game so much. It's just so different, and it's kind of has more of an emphasis on, like, the atmosphere and the world building and all that stuff. And there's also, like, stealth sections and, more combat-oriented parts, which probably could have been done a little bit better, because the combat isn't really that fleshed out, but it's fun. It does the job for what it is, and kind of builds tension in a way that's effective enough for it to be intriguing. In the top 3, I have a Super Smash Bros. Melee. Pretty much every Smash game, I've put more hours into the Super Smash Bros. Series than probably any other game. Well, that and Minecraft, which I listed as an honorable mention because I actually really love Minecraft. Now, Smash is definitely best enjoyed when you're playing it with friends and stuff, but I actually like the single player modes too. I think that, especially in Melee, how it had that kind of adventure mode where you go through it and, you know, there's different levels from all the different games. Obviously, Brawl had kind of a more fleshed out one with all the cutscenes and everything like that, and that's really awesome too. I love playing that. It's amazing how many hours I've put into Smash Bros. And how much I still suck at it, but regardless, I kind of changed my main a lot. When I finally learned how to wave dash, Luigi was my main because Luigi's wave dash is like super huge, and you know, it's fun to do that when you can execute it. Also got to give a shout out to Project M because that is really fun. Unfortunately, I can't play it anymore because my Wii's kind of broken. My Wii doesn't really read Wii discs anymore, but it can still play GameCube games, so you know, that's good. And I have a Wii U. Yeah, I'm actually one of the 4 people who owns a Wii U, and I can play all my Wii games on there, so it's fine, but I can't really play Project M on there, I don't think. And even if I could, I don't have like the GameCube controller adapter, and I'm not gonna play Smash with like a sideways Wii remote. Half-Life 2 is my second favorite game of all time. I think that the way that this game manages to balance world building with gameplay is really great, you know, because a lot of people, they'll praise games like BioShock and stuff for its world building, which I entirely agree with. I think BioShock is a perfect example of excellent world building in a game, but to me, the gameplay is a little dull and it gets kind of boring after a while, and I feel like I'm kind of just playing the game to see what happens next as far as, you know, the story goes. But with Half-Life 2, I think that the way it kind of merges just the storytelling and the world is absolutely amazing, and the physics engine, I think, actually holds up pretty well. I know that they've kind of updated the source engine since the original build of it back in 2004, which is really crazy how good this game actually looks for 2004. The character models actually look pretty realistic, and also the gravity gun is just like the best weapon in any game. I mean, come on, it's the freaking gravity gun. Well, actually, the supercharged gravity gun where you can pick up people, I think that's probably like a better one than just the regular gravity gun. But regardless, I think that the way that all the physics and everything are integrated into the gameplay and the way the story's integrated is just incredible. My number 1 favorite game of all time is Mother 3. So I actually have Earthbound and Mother 3 kind of tied in the number 1 spot for this list because I love both of them so much, but I do think Mother 3 is the better game of the two. I replayed Mother 3 recently, and that kind of inspired me to even make this video because, man, it still holds up. Really, I could go on for like hours about just how amazing the writing and the story in Mother 3 is. And the gameplay as well, I think, does a lot to kind of differentiate itself from other JRPGs. I love the rhythm mechanic, where you can kind of score multiple hits just by tapping to the rhythm of the song. And just the world of Mother 3 is incredible, and the story is really interesting. And Earthbound as well, I think, does that really well. Earthbound's definitely less story-driven, though. It has a much more simple plot, and it's kind of just about the wacky, crazy moments that you run into, which is still really great, because I think Earthbound's kind of like this big allegory for kind of losing your childhood innocence. It's kind of my view of the game, but then Mother 3 is just kind of this more apocalyptic kind of story that is executed really well. I would talk about it in more depth if, you know, everybody else in the world hadn't already done it. Like, there's really nothing I can even say about it. I mean, I saw someone made a video that was like a 3-hour analysis of Mother 3. Like, I don't know what I can say about these games that hasn't been said a million times before, but they are that great and, you know, definitely influential as well on modern indie games. I think it's kind of become an entire genre of games, just kind of ripping off Earthbound at this point. If you haven't played any of the games that I mentioned here, I'd recommend that you do so because they're all really great life experiences that I love and I cherish. And yeah, so I'm gonna go and probably play some Binding of Isaac or something. Yeah, peace.